Hi, I'm attorney Renee Osipov with Chelle Law, and we assist parents, guardians, and students who are having issues surrounding special education in the public school or charter school setting, specifically with IEPs or 504 plans. In this video, I'm discussing 504 plans in the context of the state of Ohio and what does that look like. And 504 plans are the same for actually all 50 states. So 504 plans are codified in federal law, specifically the Individuals with a Disability Act, Section 504. That's where they get their name. 504 plans are codified in federal law, so they're federal requirements. So even if you're in Ohio or Florida or Illinois, any state, the requirements are going to be the same. So even if you move out of state, you take that 504 plan and it can be implemented at a new school district because they're the same. But what is a 504 plan? What does it look like? How is it implemented? We can kind of go through that process together. So 504 plans, in order for a student to qualify in Ohio, the federal law states that a child or student has to have a mental or physical impairment that substantially limits a major life activity. So what does this mean? So a child can have any type of physical or mental impairment. The list is really endless. That's one great thing about a 504 plan as opposed to an IEP. Sometimes those are used interchangeably. But IEP, you have to have certain category to qualify. 504, you don't. You just have to have any mental or physical impairment. So if parents or guardians are wanting to ask or request for a 504 plan, I always recommend starting with your healthcare provider to get the actual diagnosis. So maybe your primary care provider or pediatrician can provide them for you. You might have to go to a specialist, or maybe you're just going to a therapist or psychologist, and they can get that diagnosis to you. So once you get that, then you need to determine if you believe that your child is being substantially limited within the classroom, or actually, within the school itself. So maybe this is just on assignments, getting assignments done. They need some type of accommodation, or how the general education teacher is providing the information. Or maybe transitions in the hallway, maybe there's some type of physical or even emotional impairment there that they need an accommodation for. Cafeteria, this is the biggest oversight I see, especially with students who have processing or sensory processing disorders, and then even extracurricular activities. So all of these things can be included in a 504 plan. So if you're in the state of Ohio, you've got that diagnosis and you feel like the child has been impaired, then it's best to write a formal letter to the school notifying them that you would like for the child to be evaluated for a 504 plan. So the federal law states, though, that the school has to respond within a reasonable time. Now, this is pretty vague, right? So unreasonable can mean different things to different people. So my rule of thumb, in my opinion, is you can notify the school, but if you don't hear back within a week or two, keep reaching out, or you may even have to get an attorney involved. I've gotten involved just to get the process starting before. But once they get the notice and they reach back out, typically the team will assemble and they will decide and evaluate the student's diagnosis, the data collected normally from the general education teacher. So sometimes this is grades, sometimes this is observation of behavior, and then other times more evaluations are needed. So potentially some type of therapist or psychologist will get involved to decide if the student would then qualify. So then at this point, if they decide that the school, or if the school decides that the child does qualify, then there will be an additional meeting, again, within a reasonable time, but it's normally within a month. At the very latest, it would be within a month, where they would reassemble and create and draft the 504 plan. So the 504 plan is going to have the goals where we want the student to be, and then it will also have where they currently are, and then accommodations, what's going to be provided to that student. So I can kind of walk through those a little bit. Accommodations can really vary on a 504 plan, but they need to be tailored to meet the student's needs. So if they're having issues around maybe taking exams because of anxiety, and they have a diagnosis of that, the 504 plan can address that. So it may say that they're given a specific extended period of time to take the exam. Maybe they are allowed to take it in a different environment where it's quieter and less sort of stimulation around. Also, maybe test is read to them. Maybe they're allowed to break it up into chunks. It's called chunking. You'll see that a lot if a child has a diagnosis of ADHD. If it's more physical, though, it's going to just maybe be accommodations to the environment. So if a child's in a wheelchair and is having difficulty coming in and out of the classroom, maybe they're allowed to sit in a specific place within the classroom. Maybe the desks have to be accommodating so that any rows in between are wide enough for that child to move around freely within the classroom. So again, accommodations, really endless. You can get very creative with a 504 plan, and that's kind of what's great about it. We really have to think, a lot of times there is this sort of narrative about special education and it's difficult or, it's not really inclusive. 504 plans, they're really just meant to give accommodations to the student. And again, I do want to reiterate that this is federal law. So even though you're in Ohio, the federal law states that these have to be provided and implemented. So these are not guidelines. I want to make that very clear. This is a misconception of schools and parents and staff that these are guidelines, and they're not. They're accommodations. They are what is given to the student, so they're not discriminated against. So also, even though you're in Ohio, if you feel like the school is not complying with a 504 plan, it's always best to sort of give them notice that you feel like they're not, and wait for them to respond within a reasonable time. And if they don't, you can actually file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. This is a federal agency, but you can file a complaint and there's a whole dispute process. Now, an attorney can do this for you. Like, this is what I do in my practice, but parents can certainly do it on their own as well. But I think it's just important to know that there are rights and remedies out there for you. So just to kind of summarize, even though you're in Ohio, the rights and rules of 504 plans are the same in all 50 states. You can easily request one with just a letter, start with a diagnosis, and come into that meeting with some ideas of what you think your student needs in order to succeed in the classroom. So if you'd like more information, you can check out my other videos, blogs, everything. Our content is all linked in the description below this video. Our contact information is also in there if you need any assistance with maybe looking at an already constructed 504 plan, or if you need help just getting one, feel free to reach out. Thanks.